The air in the room turned heavy the moment Marlene's manicured finger pointed across the table. "Tessa, darling," she said sweetly, though the condescension in her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "I'm sure you understand that this vacation calls for a certain level of sophistication. Perhaps it's best if you stayed behind." A hush fell over the long, polished dining table. 20 faces, some filled with pity, others smirking behind wine glasses, turned to stare at Tessa. Please like and subscribe to my channel for more contents. The topic of conversation, an exclusive 2-week family getaway to Azure Pearl Island in the Maldives, now felt like a dagger twisted in her chest. Her husband, Marcus, sitting beside her, reached under the table and grasped her hand tightly. His palm was damp, his pulse frantic. Above them, a sparkling chandelier cast fractured light across Marlene's blueprints of the luxury villa she'd bragged about for nearly an hour, the same villa she had just banned Tessa from. "My name is Tessa. I'm 32 years old, and once worked as a barista while earning my business degree. What none of them know, not even Marcus's pretentious sister, is that I'm also a self-made millionaire with investments that could rival the family fortune. But I've kept that secret until now." "Mother," Marcus said suddenly, his voice slicing through the stunned silence. "If Tessa's not going, I'm not going either." Marlene's eyes narrowed. The polite mask slipped slightly. "Marcus, don't be foolish. The entire family is attending. Your cousins are flying in from Geneva. You cannot miss this trip because your wife doesn't fit in." "She's right," his sister Eleanor added with a lazy swirl of her wine glass. "Tessa would feel so out of place. Remember the yacht club incident?" Tessa remembered. Eleanor had spilled champagne on her dress, then loudly offered to upgrade her look, as if she were doing a charity favor. Tessa smiled softly and touched Marcus's arm. "It's okay," she whispered. "You should still go." The flash of satisfaction on Marlene's face was unmistakable. She thought she'd won again. From the day Marcus introduced her to his old money family, Marlene had tried to drive a wedge between them. Tessa, the girl from a modest background who served coffee, was never supposed to last. But Marcus fell in love with her the way one falls asleep. Slowly at first, then all at once. He didn't care that she worked in a cafe while chasing her master's degree. And she didn't care that he wore cufflinks worth more than her car. Love had been enough, at least, until Marlene Anderson started her quiet war. "Remember the Rothschild girl?" Marlene would say sweetly in front of Tessa. "She's back from Paris, still single too." At every gathering, she reminded Tessa of her place. "That dress is from a department store, isn't it? How quaint." Or, "You must love not working anymore. It suits you." But what Marlene didn't know was that while Tessa poured lattes and smiled politely, she was also investing in cryptocurrency and startups. Quietly, strategically. By the time she married Marcus, her net worth had quietly surpassed that of the Andersons. She lived simply, watched silently, and waited. That evening, as the dinner wound down and crystal glasses clinked with one last toast to Anderson excellence, Marlene stood, her voice ringing like a polished bell. "I've arranged private chefs, helicopter tours, and an exclusive wine tasting. The entire Azure Pearl Island resort is ours for 2 full weeks." Tessa nodded politely as the others murmured approval. Not one person mentioned her name. Not one asked if she'd be joining. When she and Marcus climbed into their car later, he was still fuming. "She humiliated you in front of everyone, Tess. I should have said more." "You said enough," Tessa said gently, staring out at the darkened driveway as the gate closed behind them. Marcus started the engine, still tense. "We don't have to let her treat you like this. I'll cancel the trip." But Tessa wasn't listening. Her eyes were on her phone. There, at the top of her inbox, the email she'd been waiting for had just landed. Subject: Azure Pearl Island Resort. Final transfer confirmation. 6 months earlier, Tessa had overheard Marlene talking about wanting to book Azure Pearl Island. The resort was beautiful, private, luxurious, and financially struggling. Within weeks, Tessa had made inquiries through a discreet financial advisor and set up a trail of shell companies. By the time Marlene finalized her reservation, Tessa had already closed on the entire resort. Not just the villa, the whole island. She hadn't even told Marcus yet. That night, as they sat in their modest living room, still cluttered with thrift store finds and memories of their simple beginnings, Marcus leaned back with a sigh. "I'm serious, Tess. I'll tell her tomorrow we're staying home." She turned to him with a smile that tugged at the corners of her lips. "Actually, I want you to go." Marcus blinked. "Go? Without you? Why?" "Because it's time your mother learned that appearances can be very deceiving," she said, the glow of her laptop screen lighting her eyes. Marcus tilted his head. "Tessa, what are you planning?" She just smiled. The next morning, the Andersons boarded their private jet, sipping mimosas and adjusting their designer sunglasses. Marlene was in her element, barking orders at staff while flipping through pages of her itinerary. Tessa, back home, was not idle. From her home office, she logged into the secure server linked to Azure Pearl Island's internal systems. The previous owner had set up a comprehensive surveillance and resort management platform, which Tessa now fully controlled. She watched through the live feeds as the Anderson family arrived later that afternoon, stepping onto the white, sands like they owned the place. Marlene led the way, head high, phone already out to record the walk to the villa. "Welcome to Azure Pearl Island Resort," said James, the manager Tessa had personally briefed. He wore a calm, knowing smile. Marlene offered her hand like royalty. "I trust everything is in order." The presidential villa. James consulted his tablet. "There's been a slight change, ma'am. The owner is currently staying in the presidential villa." Marlene's face froze. "Excuse me." "That's impossible," Marlene snapped. "I booked the entire island. No one else was supposed to be here." James nodded politely. "The owner isn't a guest, Mrs. Anderson. They have final say over accommodations." "Who is this owner?" she demanded. "I want to speak with them immediately." "Of course," James said smoothly. "Please follow me to the pavilion. The owner has prepared a welcome message." The family followed, grumbling. Eleanor whispered something snide to her fiancé. Marlene's husband looked confused, unsure how to react. The pavilion was airy and elegant, overlooking the turquoise ocean. In the center stood a large screen. The moment they sat, the video began to play. Tessa's face appeared, smiling and composed. "Hello, Anderson family," she said warmly. "Welcome to my island." Marlene let out a gasp, her jaw dropping. Tessa continued, "Yes, you heard that correctly. I own Azure Pearl Island Resort and several others like it around the world." Eleanor dropped her sunglasses. Marcus leaned back, hiding a smirk. He'd learned the truth just before boarding and nearly didn't go. "I built this empire quietly," Tessa's video said. "While some of you mocked my past as a barista, I was building wealth, investing, learning. Not for revenge, but to prove that value isn't measured by labels." Marlene looked like she'd been slapped. And now the screen continued. "As the owner, I've made a few adjustments to your accommodations." Tessa's voice took on a light, deliberate tone. "Marlene, you'll be staying in our economy villa. It's modest, but perfectly suited for someone who believes others should know their place." The room went still. "The rest of the family may choose from our standard suites. The presidential villa is currently occupied." Marlene shot up from her seat. "This is outrageous. I demand." James stepped in. "Your deposit has been refunded, ma'am. The owner's decision is final." "Oh, and one more thing." Tessa's face smiled from the screen. "Marlene, I've arranged for you to work a shift each day at the beach bar. Consider it a cultural exchange between the served and the servers." Eleanor, choked on her drink. "I will not do this," Marlene shouted, her voice echoing over the water. "I'm calling legal. This is abuse." James remained unbothered. "Unfortunately, phones won't be working for the next few days. Satellite repair delay." "That's ridiculous." "There's also no private helicopter service until the weekend," he added, checking his tablet. "Maintenance protocols." Marlene stood frozen in disbelief. Over the next few hours, her tantrum grew louder. She barked at James, demanded someone fetch the real owner, and insisted the island must be confused. But as evening fell, she stood at the beach bar in a staff uniform, khaki shorts, and a white button-down shirt with a name tag that read "Page Trainee." Marcus sipped a cocktail nearby, watching silently as his mother handed drinks to family members she'd once commanded. "Enjoying yourself?" Eleanor asked him. He raised a brow. "More than I expected." Back home, Tessa watched it all unfold from her laptop, sipping tea and smiling. For the next 2 weeks, Marlene Anderson lived a very different kind of luxury. One where she learned to serve cocktails, sweep sand from walkways, and take lunch orders without rolling her eyes. The woman who once said, "Service work is for people without options," was now that person. Guests chuckled when they saw her, not knowing who she was. Some tipped her. Others asked if she was new. She answered every time with a forced smile and a name badge that never let her forget. Page Trainee. Every morning, she woke early. Every night, she returned to the economy villa that didn't even have a soaking tub. And every time she complained, she was reminded that leaving the island wasn't an option until the end of the trip. Meanwhile, Marcus spent his days swimming with his cousins, sipping wine with Eleanor's fiancé, and enjoying the freedom of watching his mother humbled. Back home, Tessa began preparing her arrival, timed perfectly for the family's last day on the island. She wasn't done yet. On the 14th day, the sun rose gently over Azure Pearl Island. The staff were buzzing quietly with news. "She's arriving today," whispered one housekeeper. "The owner's coming in." Marlene, now visibly thinner, with sunburned cheeks and hair pulled back in a makeshift bun, had just finished her beach bar shift. She wiped her forehead with a towel and slumped into a nearby chair. Her hands were rough. Her nails, once immaculately done, were chipped. She didn't speak much that morning. Even Eleanor had stopped teasing. The humiliation of the last 2 weeks had left Marlene quieter. That afternoon, as the Anderson family gathered for one final meal by the ocean, a sleek private jet touched down at the resort's landing strip. A black luxury golf cart pulled up to the pavilion. From it stepped Tessa, elegant, poised, and smiling. She wore a flowing sundress and sandals, her hair braided back with effortless grace. She looked every bit the owner, and nothing like the girl Marlene had tried to exclude. "Tessa!" Eleanor stood up, blinking. "You're really here?" Tessa nodded. "Thought I'd join you for the last evening." Marcus crossed the pavilion to greet her, his smile uncontainable. "You look amazing," he whispered, pulling her into a hug. "Thanks," she murmured back. "How's your mother holding up?" He grinned. "See for yourself." Tessa turned to the bar. Marlene stood behind it, wiping glass, her eyes widening when she saw Tessa approaching. Tessa took a seat directly across from her. "Hi, Marlene." Marlene's lips parted, but no words came out. Her posture slumped. She looked down at the tray of fruit slices she was arranging. "Having fun?" Tessa asked softly. Marlene looked up, her voice shaky. "Why did you do this?" Tessa leaned forward, resting her elbows gently on the bar. "Because you needed to understand something I couldn't explain with words." Marlene frowned. "Which is?" "That everyone, no matter their job, deserves dignity," Tessa said. "Every server, cleaner, assistant. They're not beneath you." Marlene's throat bobbed. "I didn't mean to. I just—" Tessa waited, giving her space to finish. I never thought about it like that, Marlene admitted, her voice barely a whisper. I've spent my whole life thinking titles mattered, that people like you were less. Tessa offered gently. Yes, Marlene said, but these 2 weeks, I've never worked so hard, never felt so invisible. It hurt. That's how you made me feel, Marlene. Every dinner, every snide comment. Tears formed in Marlene's eyes. For once, there was no mascara to run, just raw, unfiltered remorse. The dinner that evening was simple: grilled seafood, fruit platters, and fresh coconut drinks. But something was different. Marlene didn't sit at the head of the table. She stood beside the servers, helping to pour wine and pass plates. The family watched, stunned. Eleanor murmured, "Is this real?" Marcus nodded. "It is." Tessa sat quietly observing. She didn't gloat. She didn't need to. As the sun set and cast golden light across the water, Marlene approached with a dish of grilled pineapple. She offered it to Tessa with trembling hands. "I know I can't undo the past," she said, "but I want to try to be better." Tessa took the plate. "That's all I ever wanted." They shared a quiet moment, two women from different worlds, finally meeting in the middle. The air felt lighter. Respect, once missing, had finally entered the room. When the Andersons left the island the next morning, they did so quietly. No flashy photos, no social media posts, just thoughtful goodbyes and softer expressions. Marlene hugged Tessa at the dock, her voice low. "Thank you for not giving up on me." Tessa smiled. "Thank you for finally seeing me." As the yacht pulled away, Marlene looked back at the island, her pride, once so towering, now humbled. Tessa remained at the resort for a few more days. She met with the management team, toured the villas, and sat down with the staff. "I want this place to become more than a luxury stop," she told James. "I want it to be a place of learning, of perspective." James nodded. "We can design an immersion program. Let people experience service work from the inside. And let Marlene be the first guest speaker," Tessa said, smiling. The idea was born that day, the Perspective Project. Back in the city, life changed. Marlene stepped out of the spotlight. She resigned from her society board and began volunteering at a local hospitality college. She spoke to students about empathy, about arrogance, about change. She also started a foundation, the Pearl Initiative, which awarded scholarships to hotel and restaurant workers aiming to build careers. One afternoon, she visited the cafe where Tessa used to work. The same barista who once trained Tessa greeted her. "Can I help you, ma'am?" he asked. Marlene smiled. "No, I just wanted to say thank you. You helped shape someone who changed my life." He blinked, confused, but nodded. Tessa and Marcus returned to their regular routine. But now Marlene joined them for coffee once a week. She greeted staff by name. She listened to their stories. And she tipped generously. That Christmas, Tessa hosted dinner at her and Marcus's newly purchased penthouse, bought in full from her own accounts. The living room was warm with laughter. Even Eleanor helped with the dishes. Marlene arrived last, carrying a box wrapped in soft blue paper. "I made this for you," she told Tessa. Inside was a handmade photo album, filled with candid shots from the island vacation. On the final page was a simple handwritten note. "Thank you for teaching me that the best view in life comes from getting off your high horse." Tessa's eyes welled up. "This means more than you know." "I know," Marlene said, her voice thick. "And I meant it." From that night on, they stopped calling each other in-laws. They called each other family. Today, Azure Pearl Island remains a luxury resort, but with a difference. Each year, it hosts high-profile guests not just for leisure, but for immersion. 1 week of pampering, 1 week of service. Marlene trains alongside the new guests, telling her story openly. "I used to think respect came with a last name, but the people who taught me otherwise wore name tags." Tessa oversees the program's expansion. From Bali to Barbados, more resorts have joined. It's no longer about revenge. It's about perspective. And Tessa? She still prefers her mornings quiet, still enjoys her coffee from that same corner shop. Sometimes she sits by the window and smiles at the thought that the girl everyone once dismissed now runs an empire, grounded in humility. When a reporter asked Tessa during a business summit, "What's the secret to your success?" she smiled thoughtfully. "It's simple," she said. "Never underestimate anyone. Not the woman cleaning the floors, not the girl serving your coffee, and definitely not the person your pride tells you to ignore." The audience applauded. Later that evening, she received a call from Marlene. "I watched your interview," she said. "You were brilliant." Tessa chuckled. "Thanks. I learned from the best and worst." "Fair," Marlene said, laughing softly. "And hey, I've signed up for another shift at the beach bar next month." "Voluntarily?" "Yes. I like how it feels. Keeps me grounded." Tessa smiled. "That's all I ever wanted." And she meant it. The story of Tessa and Marlene became more than just family drama. It became a lesson retold at conferences, business schools, and luxury training seminars. It reminded people that power doesn't come from inheritance. It comes from insight, from empathy, and from standing your ground when the world tries to seat you lower. Tessa never bragged. She never flaunted. But every now and then, at the resort bar where she sometimes sipped a sunset drink, a guest would lean over and whisper, "You're her, aren't you? The owner?" She'd smile and nod, and sometimes she'd ask, "Would you like to help serve drinks tonight?" Some said yes, some said no, but those who said yes, they left with more than a tan. They left changed. On a calm evening back at Azure Pearl Island, the breeze carried the scent of salt and blooming hibiscus through the open windows of the main pavilion. Tessa sat alone at the beach bar, sipping from a coconut shell, her bare feet dug into the warm sand. A quiet hum of laughter drifted from a nearby bonfire where new guests, some of them millionaires, some just curious travelers, took turns serving drinks to one another. The lights twinkled softly. Marlene stepped out from the back, now wearing her staff apron like it was stitched with purpose. She handed Tessa a fresh drink without a word, then sat beside her. For a moment, they simply watched the ocean together. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Marlene said. "It always was," Tessa replied. "We just don't always know how to look at it." Marlene nodded. "Thank you, Tessa, for humbling me with grace instead of hate." Tessa turned to her and smiled. Sometimes the strongest revenge is kindness, and sometimes it turns enemies into family. Behind them, the laughter rose again, and somewhere in the night, a bell rang. Another guest ready to learn. Tessa leaned back in her chair, eyes on the stars, feeling no anger, no bitterness, just peace. The girl once dismissed as the coffee girl now owned an island, and more importantly, she had changed a heart. That was worth more than all the villas in the world. Like and subscribe to my channel for more contents like this, and let us know where you are watching from under the comment section.